You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb, our Source Today security analyst, Gregory Wyatt. He's also the director for business intelligence of the Philippine Strategic Advisors. Mr. Wyatt, welcome to The Source, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Pinky. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. There was an advisory, of course, this came out about 2 days ago from Japan telling its citizens to actually avoid crowded places in a number of Southeast Asian countries, including the Philippines, to which the Philippine government had responded that it has no such intel so far. My question is, how serious is this threat?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear at this point that it's not about a specific plot or a specific threat. It's what you call a report about a general concern about the risk of terrorism within Southeast Asia.
So why? What would you be able to reconcile this for us? Why would Japan come out with an advisory for seven countries: Thailand, Singapore, Myanmar, the Philippines, and then the Philippines itself saying we have not received any intel to actually confirm this Japan advisory?
Right. So we don't really know what caused the Japanese MOFA to issue the advisory, right? But it seems there's a lot of overlap between a piece of Islamic State propaganda that came out on September 10th that called for attacks within Southeast Asia. And they mentioned the advisory, the advisory and both this piece of propaganda mentioned religious sites. They mentioned specific religions that are present within Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of overlap between that piece of propaganda and the Japanese MOFA's advisory. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, so the MOFA and the day-to-day operations of Filipino security forces are quite different, right? Filipino security forces are focused on really very specific reports that they can take action on. Information about potential very specific plots so you can disrupt the attack, so that you can arrest particular individuals and things like that. That's what day-to-day counterterrorism operations look like. The MOFA report was more general, that there is a terror risk, a very general terror risk within Southeast Asia. And I think it's potentially they could have worded it more carefully. As an analyst, when you're writing about the general risk of terrorism, it's very easy to potentially scare your readers, right? I've done that before.
I see. So you actually don't, am I correct in analyzing that you're not taking this threat seriously? Would that be correct?
So I wouldn't choose to word it that way, right? But the wording that you would use within the security community is that it's not about a specific plot. The Japanese MOFA, I don't believe, has particular information about a particular attack that may take place in 6 different countries, right? Just that the very nature of the warning itself, you can see that an attack in 6 different countries would be one of the largest attacks in history, right? It's not logical, and it's not logical based upon what we know, based upon the security environment in the Philippines right now. This is something that attracted a lot of attention within the private security community. And I think that this has become the general consensus that it was a general report about a general risk of terrorism within the region, but that it was not based upon specific actionable intelligence.
Yeah, there was really not much to that particular advisory. At least on that point, you're right. So I guess it's best to proceed with caution regarding this advisory. But some are actually saying, Mr. Wyatt, that this could be somehow related to the 9/11 attacks and even the situation in Afghanistan. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so. So I think initially I considered that possibility, right? That it was somehow connected to events in Afghanistan. But really, what it looks like now is that there's this piece of Islamic State propaganda that came out of an affiliate in Afghanistan that called for attacks against religious sites, in particular in Southeast Asian countries, right? So it's not really recommended to use propaganda for your threat intelligence, right? Because consistently the Islamic State overstates its capabilities. And they've been calling for similar kinds of attacks since 2016, really. So I don't particularly think that this is something new, if it was that report in question that we're talking about.
But I guess as we speak, I can imagine that there must be some sort of communication between the Philippines and the Japanese government regarding this.
Yeah, and I think that if the Japanese government had specific information, they would share it very quickly with the Philippine government. But
right.
you wouldn't normally expect this kind of information to come out of Japan. Japan has some really unique intelligence capabilities, but not typically when it comes to monitoring the threat of Middle Eastern or Southeast Asian terrorism.
And so why this?
But Japanese capabilities are focused on other issues, right? But I think why the advisory came out. MOFA actually puts out a lot of very specific, very cautious information for its citizens. That MOFA is probably more active than the State Department, than any other Department of Foreign Affairs in terms of putting out security information. And one of the reasons they can do that is because all the advisors are in Japanese, right? So I read all the advisories that come out of MOFA. They put out a lot of very detailed information. If a Japanese company in Cebu receives a threatening phone call, there'll be a MOFA report about it. And typically they don't go viral though, right? I have to have someone translate it for me, for example, when I read it. So I think that, perhaps in the future, MOFA might word an advisory like this more carefully. I think, for example, there was a warning that the U.S. Embassy put out about September 11th, right? And they said that as September 11th approaches, the possibility for an attack may increase. I think that this MOFA advisory is more analogous to that advisory that was put out by the U.S. Embassy about September 11th.
Right. Security analyst Gregory Wyatt, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.